Good evening,
Hello,
Graham.
hello.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Yeah, how are you? How are you feeling about the wonders of magic and fantasy?
That's a good question, Graham. The it depends whose magic and fantasy you're talking about, I think. Um, so we running through our program. Let's call it a program now of pods that we've done. I can't help it, but I end up sitting back and looking at the sort of shape. If you go back to where we started and the smaller thematics that run through things to the bigger shape of what we've put together. And then we were chatting about, okay, where do we go and what do we want to talk about? And it's kind of got to a point for me where I think you came up with this idea of the fantastic, which in itself is, yeah, suddenly very suggestive of so many different things, with a subheading: aliens, monsters, gods, magic, and the uncanny. And that locks straight into a whole series of things that, yes, I'm preoccupied with in lots of different ways, in being human, but also in the things I'm trying to do in the studio and make, but also in teaching. Uh, which kind of begs this question for me about, if I think about the fantastic, it's something imagined outside of yourself. And I think all cultures have many ways in which they embody this idea of something. It's hard to put a literal description on it, but something more than yourself. And I think that's a really innate human quality. A very obvious thing would be to look at sort of spiritual, religious qualities. But I think it's way more than just that. I think it's reading the world beyond itself, i.e., to see all the great poetic metaphors that the world has given us. Um, the metaphor is a flower, it's water, it's a tree. It becomes more than itself. And I think, particularly at the moment, socially, politically, I think the sense of the need for something more than is very pressing. But if we start where we were with animals, and I think where we ended with animals was something about, we talked, I think, last time about the metaphorical quality of animals and the projection, human projection on animals, but the other way round also, the way that animals project onto us. And we had this discussion about our dogs. So, leading from that, the idea of a sort of aliens suggests it's not animal, but it's something other. And I wanted to know, how do you feel about the idea of aliens? I mean, I know you always have been since I've known you, interested in science fiction. Aliens is a kind of discipline unto itself. And I think, the study of aliens and others is everything from amazing television programs I used to watch, Close Encounters, to we're off. How do you feel about that? How do you
Mm.
feel about, I'm talking now not just the immediate human, animal human, nature human, but the otherness, that something other than us out there. Is something just pure fantasy, or is it something you've ever thought was a tangible thing in itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone. I would assume most people who are kind of schooled in the Western cosmology of the solar system and the universe and all of the science that goes with that would have some corner of their mind where they would say there's alien life somewhere, because we have a understanding of the universe as infinite, and we have a very strong message from science that suggests that organic life will exist on other planets. So yeah, I think most people can happily say it seems that there will be other forms of life on other planets. That seems fairly straightforward. So yeah, in that sense, I'm a believer. I guess you could say. You're right. There's in aliens, and I would say other cultural forms, which we may get onto. Aliens are fantastic creatures because they project outward in very heavily symbolic ways aspects of human nature. Curiously, aliens are very much human products. They're incredibly, in terms of modern depictions of aliens, they're incredibly human all the time. It's really very obvious. They're a little shorter than us. They're a little skinnier than us. They're a kind of silver color and have big eyes. Yeah, but in a way, it's a remarkable lack of imagination in a lot of science fiction for that reason. But it does reveal that the alien is a product of the human imagination, and I think it is really fascinating and telling that aliens are so present in Western public cultures, and as you say, cultures around space and time have versions of alien beings. Kind of you can see interpretations of quite ancient hieroglyphs and pictorial forms with supposedly alien presences, giants, spheres in the sky, that kind of thing. But in Western cultures, really, it kicks off in the late 1800s, and you can follow it all through the UFO and the alien. You can follow it all through to the present day, and it's what's interesting to me about that, and is how those fantastic images of the alien are codes to something historic, something human and historic. It tends to come back to an interesting and displaced discussion around something that's happening in the world.
Do you think that's linked to some sort of existential notion about we're on our own and we can't be on our own? I.e., there is something out there, and at this point, I don't want to go into sort of religious, but just the notion that it's hard for humans to accept that they might be on their own, that there is an innate sense there must be something out there, a force or whatever it is we call it, that's beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think culturally, as I know it, it's probably embodied in most cultures. But again, that some of that will be religiously more aligned. But the idea that poor little humans can't be on their own.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the results of astrology, initially getting a sense of where we are located in relation to the rest of the solar system and then the Milky Way, and then the genuinely transformative moment when satellites in the late 60s took pictures of Earth from outer orbit. I mean, these things massively, radically changed the ways we see the planet we're on, right? The old idea that the Earth was kind of like this little center of everything that was just overlooked by some giant eye, God's eye in some form or another, that went kind of out the window, and suddenly we became a spinning a small to medium sized rotating piece of rock around a relatively small star inside a massive
Yeah.
cluster constellation called the Milky Way, outside of which is everything else. And so we kind of provincialized ourselves, made ourselves into a corner of the universe. And then the obvious question is, well, what's there?
Yes.
So yeah, I think it is now a mainstream. I think it's mainstreamed into most people's views, not worldviews, but cosmologies. That there's other life forms tinkering around out there, and I mean most public attitude surveys, particularly in the United States, reveal very large numbers of people who believe that aliens either have visited or are imminently going to visit
Yeah.
this planet, or that UFOs are real. Particularly because there's some quite convincing footage that there are
Yeah.
certainly unidentified aerial phenomena, as they're called now.
Yes.
That there are in some interesting there are some
So,
interesting things, and everyone's excited by it. Yeah.
so picking up that, why do you think then that in a kind of general narrative, aliens are a threat?
Well, yeah. Now we get into this really deeply kind of concrete human kind of line of inquiry. I mean, alien threat. Partly, it's a logical thing. If some other life form has arrived here, they're clearly better than we are because we can't get out from beyond. We're not anywhere near colonizing Mars. Elon Musk is never going to colonize Mars, and no one else is for a long time. So the idea that something else pops up, that's kind of scary. Hey, what have you achieved? Well, we've got these nuclear reactors, and we've just invented generative AI. It's like shit, isn't it? Really. So yeah, it must be. It's nervous. Okay? It's like being. If we ever think about aliens visiting us, it's a bit like having your first day in big school. We'll just be surrounded by kids who know loads more than we do. So
That's
you
the
best keep your
narrative,
head down.
and I think from close encounters of the whatever first, second, third kind.
Yeah.
There's this idea of I mean, it kind of for me it was like when you said aliens, I was kind of thinking like monsters at the same time because we create a narrative around some external force, be they individual or collective, whatever it is that aliens become. It's a threat, and I think the idea of monsters are not human, they're not animal. And I think the narrative of monsters are these other things that threaten the stability of. I think it's existential, isn't it? It's the otherness that we can't comprehend. And the idea of the monster, in my understanding, particularly Western narrative, is this alien thing that takes form, can be a shapeshifter, can be a multiple ghost thing that can occupy any number or inhabit any bodily form. It's really powerful. And again, the alien to me was, when I was thinking about it, is very much to do with the ghost, spiritual monster story, which shifts us from the bodily into this otherness. And again, I was thinking, is it a human condition, to be, again, this unstable about accepting our modest humbleness, that there are these other things out there that are influencing or can influence us. But it's always to do with threat. It's not to do with, well, of course, in Greek mythologies, the great erotic, figures that turn us into sexual beasts and all sorts of different other things. Um, but generally, my sense was that it's a threat which threatens us rather than it's kind of like, wow, thank God the aliens are here because now we can finally crack it and get on with things in a much better way. It's normally
Yeah,
countering something.
yeah.
Science fiction, particularly, I don't know enough. You're much better versed in science fiction literature and film. Is always to do with it's a good and evil protagonist, isn't it? Generally,
Yeah, I think so as a general rule. I mean, there are other and as you know, there are other ways of representing aliens in some science fiction. But yeah, that's the general rule. I think just in terms of that kind of these are narratives about us that are kind of ventriloquized through strange beings from elsewhere. The the rise of the alien threat as a kind of mainstay in American television clearly coincides with the height of the Cold
oh,
War.
absolutely,
So
totally,
there's
yeah,
a kind of global xenophobia transposed into a planetary xenophobia there, and
totally
the
agree.
the Red Scare and
Yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
as you call it, a Green Scare.
yeah.
They kind of overlap. But I think, I mean, yeah, moving on to monsters, I think I would suggest the interesting distinction between aliens and monsters um, is that monsters have an alterity to them. They tend to be not external and alien, but actually
Mhm.
hybrid or
Yeah,
partially modified. So take the canonical three monsters in Western cultures. They're the witch, the zombie, and the vampire.
yeah,
All of which transmute. Right? They are actually all human.
yeah. That's true.
Um,
Yeah,
the zombie is an undead human, um, conjured into life initially as a drone worker,
yeah.
which is an interesting historical marker. The witch is not always in history, not always a woman actually, but is generally seen as a woman because of the misogyny that gets
Yeah.
attached to witchcraft.
Women. It
Um,
gets attached to women.
yeah, the misogyny that gets
Yeah.
attached to witchcraft. Yeah, exactly. But also involves transmuting through the powers of the devil, being able to fly or being able to accrue certain powers.
But it's yeah, but also the monster has through what that transmuting thing has the ability to change us or something, and witchcraft is all about spells and being able to affect change, in a way that can be, you have the power to affect something,
Yeah,
which is potent, isn't it? Again, that taps into human existential doubt and crisis about our ability to communicate or function. So if somebody comes in and says, "Well, I can fix this or I can change this through whatever," and I think the classic monster for me is Frankenstein. Is called the monster in the book. Um, because again, it's the perfect analogy of the part human, part mechanical, part mechanization of the human into this hybrid. And I would, immediately the monster. I've seen references to AI being talked about as a monster in some commentaries I've been reading. Which again, it's like I can't help but think, hang on, we were here like in 1800s. It's no different. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but also these tend to be used as really derogatory terms, don't they? Oh, you're a monster, Graham. What you did. Oh God, you're a monster. It's never a flattering thing. Whereas in a lot of sort of fable stories, the monster is actually not always a bad thing. They can be kind of really liberating to be able to get beyond yourself into some state which you know I'm going to
yeah.
blame a bit of Protestant Christian upbringing in myself, which has kind of pushed me always towards these are bad things rather than kind of very potentially very uplifting, very empowering things.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, this is all very good stuff, isn't it? I mean, they're um, the monstrous that derives from the monster, and it's potentially uh, the formative influence of cultural Christianity, by which I mean not just believing in Christianity, but having all the cultural relics of Christianity
Hmm.
in your worldview. Because I mean, everyone's religious belief until very recently has been on in decline. Christian religious belief, but it's not so much anymore. But that's a different story. But everyone says, used to say from the late 50s onwards, kind of it was cool and fashionable and intellectual to kind of deny the existence of God and to read Sartre and Nietzsche and say, here's science and Richard Dawkins and blah. But we also have a deeper Christian cultural orientation that derives from a whole series of different things, which I'm not going to go on about because it's boring, or at least it would be long-winded. But the thing that I was just thinking as you were talking is, if we're talking about the monster and the alienated person, and so on, you didn't use the word, but you could have used the word demonization,
Yeah, absolutely.
because Christianity did one thing remarkable to European moral consciousness, which is to invent the devil as a single active presence in human society. It isn't even in the New Testament very prominently. This is something that is kind of invented after the collapse of the Roman Empire and into the Dark Ages, and becomes then iconic. The devil becomes this
Hmm.
iconic figure, and it is difficult for anyone seriously and sensibly who's been born in the West to deny that the devil is still very active and very present in the public
Yes,
consciousness. It's
yes.
the ultimate monster, the monster from which I would suggest all other monsters are derived.
But if you watch, as you probably do, South Park, the devil is like this amazing character. And the most recent episodes with Donald Trump have been just wonderful. And it
uh,
flips the narrative completely, inverts it the other way around.
yeah.
He's a kind of tender, sympathetic, suffering character who has gives he's anally pregnant, isn't he? So, um, but you're right, and I think this thing that when we were talking about it before, we were punching ideas around. I kept coming back to this idea, the fantastic. I mean, growing up culturally, the things I was interested in were it's hard to put it into kind of set of comfortable terms really, but there was an otherness that you were looking for. And I was, generally brought up in a pretty stable Christian Protestant background at school. I'm talking about the family wasn't particularly, but so you were trying to find other ways of a kind of counterpoint. The obvious temptations as you got into your teens were drugs, which I never took part in. Um, it was this thing of not the dark side of things, because I think that's too easy to say. Oh, it was the dark side. I don't think of it in those terms, but this otherness. So you did get interested in spooks and ghouls and monsters and aliens. Music provided you with this different narrative, and a lot of bands played on when I was really into the birthday party when they first started. It was blasphemy for my parents. I know it was the language, the use of certain imagery, violence in it. And I think I remember reading some shitty prosaic review of the birthday party, calling Nick Cave a monster. He it was this kind of character who was, and then you begin to think now, okay, well, back to where we were then. What you were saying is there an innate need then culturally to invent these characters as counterpoints because we need as kind of stable equilibrium, some soft ground in the middle that stops us going around violently abusing each other, which I don't think humans do innately. I think that's a different thing altogether.
Mm.
So then we have to
Yeah,
move into this idea of, like Nick Cave was talked about. I don't want to go on about Nick Cave, but like in a kind of godlike way. He presented this figurative, semi-symbolic figure that a lot of people looked up to and still do, I assume, of acquiring these characteristics which morally, socially, aesthetically, are we going to argue
yeah.
then there's an innate need for that? I
I
mean,
think there is a.
God,
Yeah, I don't know if
gods.
it's innate. Innate. I mean, everything is innate in some fashion, probably, because it has to come from somewhere inside us. But there is a. You're right. There is a kink in the monster narrative that derives from maybe something like frisson. The excitement of monstrosity, and it's performative with Nick Cave. And I have my own versions of that. There was a Bauhaus record that in which Peter Murphy recites the Lord's Prayer backwards,
I
and that felt to
remember.
me genuinely blasphemous to
Yeah.
hear. And I remember reading somewhere, because I did used to read occult stuff when I was a kid, because I don't know why, because I did. That
Okay.
reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards would conjure up a demon. So
Hmm.
listening to it was genuinely thrilling. I mean, thrilling. It's a free song, right? And
Agree.
I think there are versions of that all over the place. It's the monster can when it's not the devil loaded with all this Christian moral angst about how you use your genitals and how you eat and how you relate to your parents and all this kind of bollocks, where the devil is kind of going to eventually subject you to a infinite torture. Which is
Yeah, well,
something I cannot
that's
believe I was told when I was a kid,
yeah, well,
and
that's
genuinely made me
it's
fucking
still
terrified.
there. It's
It's
still
still
there.
there,
Of
and because
course
of
it
this,
is.
yeah,
It's
because we
like
have this.
from um, as you were saying, I was thinking about the book by Umberto Eco, The Name of the Rose, is just a beautiful examination of the schism in the church, in the Protestant church, about the possibility that there was a sacred religious document in which humor and playfulness and sexuality was absolutely obvious in the book, and it became this kind of hallowed text that you should or shouldn't read. And there is the film, which actually is pretty good, I think, with Sean Connery in it.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, but it kind of begs the question, doesn't it, that in my upbringing, which again it was standard church Protestant upbringing, there was this kind of heavy tempering of certain things, which I just assume is a kind of Victorian inheritance about family and social cohesion. Because prior to, as I understand it myself, prior to the kind of Georgian Victorian era, Protestantism was very different. It was only, dilated through the particularly Victorian idea of Protestant that we got this kind of, I felt really heavy loaded sort of kind of bit, work ethic and a kind of bit,
Yeah, completely
cool.
joyless. I mean, I
Where
had the
was,
same
where was the,
experience.
where was the fun,
Yeah,
And
no,
I
it was.
don't
It
think that
was.
was, I don't think it was just an adolescent thing growing up. You were a bit rebellious or whatever. I don't think it was that at all. I think it was a kind of view of something which did make you become more attracted by aliens and monsters, because they kind of represented something. Um, to use the kind of lazy word other than me, which was not in some kind of scriptural rule book or something.
Yeah.
So hence, like listening to Bauhaus or something, kind of gave you this exit route. Or I remember listening to the Funkadelic and going, fucking hell, this is just remarkable. It's like this kind of Lucy Collins dressed up like a bloody fantastic,
Yeah.
again, almost like an alien character, and somebody growing up in a very small village in Cheshire, that talk about otherness, that was remarkable, and it made a fantastic sound. So when I used to
Yeah.
have to go to Sunday school as a kid, the only reason you went was you had to, but they had a football team, and that was in the village where the football team was, and being quite heterosexual, there might be a girl there who you might fancy or something. It was kind of very, very simple. But god damn it, you couldn't talk to
Yeah.
your grown-ups about this stuff like that. And yet we know,
No, quite right.
I know you've been very damning about Foucault in the past, but his book on sexuality is great. Just
Yeah, I'd agree.
the lineage of prior to, again, he talks a lot about the Victorian, what we inherited from the Victorian sexual moral code. But prior to that, how totally liberating Christianity used to be. Um, well, yeah,
Potentially, yeah.
religious.
I mean, Protestantism had its you know, depending on which kind, certainly was a liberating and
Yeah,
maybe even liberal reformation to the Catholic Church. I think the point you make about football at Sunday school and checking out the young
yeah,
ladies and all that kind of business. There is an everyday experience of religiosity, which is quite, I think, quite long standing. So I read a history of the Reformation in Britain recently, and one of the
oh,
things, it's about magic as well, the decline of magic. Yeah, it's called the. Here it is. Look, I'm going to do a book thing. Religion and the Decline of Magic.
wow.
Really
A
old-fashioned,
bit
big,
higher. I
big,
can't
thick
see
book.
who's the author. I
Oh,
can't see the author.
Heath Thomas.
That's
He's
hefty
an
book.
Oxford. Yeah, it's a really big book. So it's a good read, and it's a very much an Oxford history. So very detailed, very granular. But what it does nicely, I think, is to show how magical beliefs, things we're talking about the fantastic, and Protestantism in the English Reformation kind of don't really, they cohabit. They don't really face off in some
Yeah,
sort of historic battle where the old pagan witchcrafty
yeah.
superstitions are erased. They actually kind of cohabit with each other, and versions and mixtures of things happen. Christ starts doing all sorts of weird new stuff. Priests can come along to um, give rough improvised diagnoses about illnesses that aren't anything to do with the biblical texts. It kind of, um, there's a conviviality there, and that I think
Mm.
is just how ordinary people in everyday lives treat religion quite a lot of the time. It's not written into any official history of the church, because official history of the church will
No, it
be far too stuffy and anxious. But and it's actually in Foucault as well. And I should say I'm less what the problem I have with Foucault, just to be very quick about it, is not so much, I think, his historic books, the ones on discipline and the ones
yeah,
on the one on discipline, the one on madness, and the one on sexuality are brilliant.
yeah, I
His
agree.
more theoretical work on biopolitics is also good, but I
Yes,
think a lot of academics have just screwed the fuck out of it and say everything is in Foucault language, which is really lazy. So that's my problem with Foucault. It's more
Okay.
critical academic work in the end of the 1900s and into the 2000s. And on that note, we've lost our connection. What a terrible time.
I think the internet was having a bit of fun with us then.
Can you hear me?
I'm here, Graham's here. Good.
Yeah, good.
So
Yeah,
I
so just
think,
very quickly,
go
yeah,
on.
so that idea that we all kind of get on with a bit of magic and a bit of everything else, I think is really important. We all have a bit of the fantastic in our lives, ordinary people. Um, so yeah, that's a point to bear in mind.
My point is exactly that. That the magic is in the ordinary, everyday things that happen.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
um, the big kind of existential otherness bits, yeah, of course they um, they affect you existentially in all the big questions and everything. But actually, the magic is in the really minute, everyday things. And I think because you can't explain those things, those kind of beautiful little moments that happen, you can't explain them. And because I don't have a higher sense of what all this fits into, they become the real things for me, which is
Yes, absolutely.
technically what I'm trying to do in the work I'm making. Those little tiny moments that just move something from just being
Yeah.
an apple or a bridge I'm looking at the work in front of me or a flower. It's just got a little something in it that just moves, and it's
Mm,
like that's the magic bit for me, not some huge transformative Spielberg-esque effect that suddenly, oh my God, I think that that's something different that I've never really, and we've talked about it before. The thing about science fiction is I don't believe it. So
yeah, although,
particularly visually, I don't, because I don't buy
yeah,
into the imagery of it. I think in literature, it's way more. I'm more persuaded that way, but I'm more
mm,
persuaded by. It's kind of like it's kind of not. It's not banal because it's magic. It's kind of just so ordinary that these extraordinary things happen. And I always have this thing. Maybe we talked about it with animals a little bit. That for all the imagination of dreaming up all these types of animals that are hybrids of this, that, and the other. Animals themselves are the most extraordinary, fantastical things.
yeah,
And it kind of makes me think I'm not locked on reality, but what's in front of me has everything alien, monster, godlike magic about it, which is the uncanny. It's this ability to kind of double over on itself and remind you of something you can't remember. Just in that moment, you get this thing that just like flips. It happens in conversations, relationships with things around you that suddenly become like, wow, that's amazing. And it's trying to pay attention to that that's art for me, is trying what you choose to pay attention to. Equally, what you choose not to pay attention to becomes really important. So the magic, I know you're learning, you're very good at it as well, Graham. Card tricks. They're fucking amazing. Watching you, because I know you've you've published some now. It's just like, wow, how the hell does that happen? It's a sleight of hand, it's a movement. It's something like that that happens when you are in the world.
yeah,
And it's often, to me, it's about relationships to things, people, places, moments, where there's something. shifts that did, wow, you know. So this is why I wanted to go on about this idea of why do we look upon those things, if we use like aliens, monsters, gods, magic, as a kind of negative thing? Is it because
Yeah, well,
we're not capable of, what's the
I mean,
word? Celebrating, but it's not like really acknowledging the kind of beauty in these things, and not feeling like it's a threat. So if you don't know something, or something happens when you're out walking your dog and you, that was extraordinary, and not thinking, oh God, I'm really worried about that,
yeah,
or something awful's about to happen. It's I think it's trying to nudge at those sort of questions for me.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's fantastic, and you answered the one question I wanted to ask you, which is about art, really, and how you make art, because that seems to me the fantastic is so central. I think to the way you make art, or at least I see it in the things that you make. But I wonder. I just wanted to pick up on a thing that I think you've mentioned Spielberg 3 times, so I think it's
Uh-huh.
fair to just go back to him a little, because he's interesting, because actually he's more than any of the big Hollywood directors. He takes science fiction seriously. None of the others touch it really. I mean, there are jokey films with Will Smith in and all this kind of thing that do it, and that's fine. But he's a proper director, and he deals with aliens 3 times in his films. He's got Close Encounters, he's got E.T., and he's got, I think it's called Revelations. It's a film, or
Yes.
Disclosure or something. It's a film coming out this year. The interesting thing about that, in terms of this point of reference you come back to about aliens and threat, is that in all 3 cases, aliens aren't a threat. He has, for reasons I
Yes.
don't know, because I haven't read anything about it, he has clearly made a decision, A, to take aliens seriously, and B, to make them uh, amicable, right? I mean, E.T. is almost a, well, I think I think E.T. is a Muppet, technically. I think he's an animatronic, friendly looking, weird thing with a long finger. I can't remember the film. The aliens, in the incredible end to Close Encounters, incredible piece of film. The aliens release back all the people they've taken into their ship,
Yeah.
and there's a kind of moment where there's a communication between humans and aliens through melody, and it's remarkable, actually, as a piece of film. So there are there are ways of addressing the fantastic that aren't threatening. And the reason why I say that, not just in terms of Spielberg, but you're right, also in terms of nature, is that there are enough aliens already. Right?
Mm.
If you look at a cuttlefish, and you observe its physiognomy and its behaviour, you're looking at an alien in every sense of the word. You're looking at an alien. There's not really much we share. Well, you can split all the DNA up and say yes, we do, but you don't really have
It,
anything in common with the
you
cuttlefish, and
couldn't
so
you
it is a wondrous creature.
you
It is a
couldn't dream it
genuinely
up.
wondrous alien creature that is beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
Is something you just desperately want to understand, and you have a sense of, I don't know quite what, but some sense of valuing of the cuttlefish, or anything else for that matter.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's twice you brought the cuttlefish up in our podcast. It's good.
I love cuttlefish.
But
Always have
again,
done.
you couldn't dream up a cuttlefish. It's impossible.
No, yeah,
So it's this thing that what's around us is so outside our I was going to say outside our comprehension, but it isn't. It's just our ability to have more stable relationships with things. You know, and I think historically, monster has been used in all sorts of political narratives. You know, from Hitler to Stalin, we're off. You know, monsters are not other than us; they are us, and that's the very foundation of politics, isn't it? For me, you know, and the idea that we have to create a kind of devil-like fiction for something because we can't comprehend the fact it's in us, as a human to become. Again, we've got too many historical cases as we live, it's happening right now. They are us. And I think that need for us to create these other narratives to try and, yeah, it is about comprehend or at least objectify into something other than ourselves. Yeah, I think it must be, yeah, probably a necessary thing. When you were talking about Spielberg, I was thinking about Jane Campion. Her Top of the Lake it was just the series on Netflix.
Oh, really? I've not seen that.
Oh, it's just extraordinary because it's ordinary, but set in a very. It's beautifully filmed, and as you would imagine, with her, beautifully filmed, but it's got this slip in it that you're never quite sure. A bit David Lynch, where what appears to be something isn't quite what you think, and she never tells you. Like
Mm.
Lynch, you never get to see something obvious, like, oh, there's the reveal, here's the alien dripping with all its coming out of its mouth. It's the expectation of it. And I think that's the bit for me that always is the hook. If you can, it's like bees to the honey pot. If you bring people into something that they assume you're in this narrative, an alien's not going to land on top of it and explain it all for you. That's always the get out clause for me, that I'm never, okay, fine, and whatever. It's the bit where you're left with yourself going, okay, this is tangible, which equates much closer to my experience. Because the unstableness we talked about last time is the very thing that's of most interest to me,
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than
I mean,
being a picture of something that oh, that's what it's like to be angry, that's what it's like to be, a mass murderer, that's what it's like to possess this demonic characteristic. And then
mm,
you're putting it away from us. So it becomes objectified into something that, okay, they're those sorts of things. They're not. That belongs to us, all that stuff.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is this thing about the uncanny, because it's this doubling reminder that maybe we can't deal with, but we know it, but we don't know it, but we know it.
Yeah. 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 I think that's right. There's I mean, it's kind of written into the idea of the uncanny, that it's partly believed and partly disbelieved simultaneously. And
Yeah.
most people would have some sort of idea about miracles or fate or
Yeah.
versions of those kinds of belief that are both kind of belief and disbelief simultaneously. No one really lives a life with pure evidence based or logical causality. Everyone, everyone has to make sense of life through moments of
Living.
uncanniness, if that's a word. So yeah, I think that's right, and it is the logic of living an ordinary life to have bits of the fantastic in it. Otherwise, I'm not sure what kind of life one can lead, really. Yeah, so I think that's right.
Well, yeah,
Right, it's right there in
that's
the heart of everyone, isn't it?
yeah, but that is, yeah, a bigger social political question, isn't it? And as you said it, I was thinking about we I know we both have a probably lifelong love of sport, and in a way, in sport you get those moments, don't you, which they are like magic, where somebody you couldn't describe. It's impossible to describe how somebody can pole vault that high. It just defies language. And then you watch somebody doing the pole vault, and whoa. Or, a
Yeah,
little nuance in a football match that just, it's like, it's referred to as magic. Somebody has the ability to do something that, wow, how did that happen? And I think,
yeah,
yeah, that's worth celebrating all that. It's phenomenal.
agreed. Yeah,
Talking of which, the World Cup's just started.
I know. Yeah, and that's pretty exciting.
It could
Um,
be.
oh, it's always exciting. It's always drama. It's always theatre.
It is. It's
So yeah,
everything. Yeah, the
yeah, it is.
problem is
I agree.
it's on fucking so late at night. But the England, I think I've only looked briefly, but the first England games sociably at a good time. So I want to watch that, watch Scotland, and then you just whatever. If I've got when you've got it's late night, isn't it? So you're going to stay up till 2 a.m. and watch Senegal against France or whatever it is. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I'd be tempted to do that one. Yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Senegal. And
Yeah,
there's always something nice about a former colony beating a metropole. So yeah, I'd
love
quite
it.
enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So on that magic moment, perhaps that's a good way to say, uh, Alice Clark.
Alice Clark. What does that mean?
All is good. All is clear.
All is good. All is clear. Yeah, yeah.
It was
I
in
hope not.
League of Gentlemen,
All right. Yeah.
which had some wonderful, monstrous characters in it, didn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of magical realism of a kind, I suppose.
Indeed.
Magical realist sitcom, you could call
There
it,
you go.
maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good one.
Yeah.
All right.
Lovely
Till
stuff.
next time.
All right. Yeah. Bye now.